The baby monitor crackled to life. At 3:12 a.m., Mara's eyes flew open, chest tight, fingers fumbling for the monitor on her nightstand. She hadn't used it in years. Her son was 10 now, but something told her not to ignore it. She hadn't even realized it was still plugged in. The screen flickered. Static. Then a voice. Soft. Gurgling. Not her son. Not anyone she recognized. Dot. And then the whisper came. Bone deep and unmistakable. Mommy, why did you bury me? Mara Dennings lived in the kind of house that seemed built to trap memories. A narrow, 2-story in upstate New York. Its white siding faded to gray, windows bleached by time and weather. Inside, everything was still. Too still. Her son, Caleb, spent most of his time in the attic, buried in books and puzzles far too complex for a 10-year-old. He didn't speak much, not since the fire that hadn't left a single mark. Doctors said it was trauma-induced selective mutism, a reaction to stress. He'll talk when he's ready, they told her. That was 3 years ago. Mara had grown used to the quiet. She filled the silence with routines. Morning coffee at exactly 6:47 a.m., laundry on Wednesdays, therapy on Fridays. Her life had become a rhythm of coping mechanisms and denial. But the baby monitor changed everything. It had been sitting in a box under the stairs. She found it while looking for old Halloween decorations. Caleb still loved the ritual, even if he never spoke. The monitor was cracked but functional. She didn't remember saving it, let alone plugging it in. But there it was, glowing green on her nightstand. And then it whispered. The voice wasn't just in her head. She heard it, felt it. The syllables curled around her bones like vines. Mommy, why did you bury me? She stared at the screen, breath held, expecting it to be a dream, a glitch. But the monitor stayed on. Static hummed like a heartbeat. No shadows moved across the screen. Just the emptiness of Caleb's room, except he wasn't in it. Panic flared. She burst from bed, bare feet slapping cold wood floors, and sprinted down the hallway. Caleb's door creaked open under her hand. The room was dim, moonlight pooling across the rug like spilled milk. The bed was empty. Her stomach dropped. Caleb? She raced up the stairs to the attic, the place he'd turned into a fortress of solitude. She found him there, knees folded beneath him, staring at a drawing. Not just any drawing. It was a baby tiny, swaddled in a green blanket. Crude crayon lines, but detailed enough to make Mara's blood run cold. She knew that blanket. She had buried it in the woods 11 years ago. Caleb. Her voice broke. Where did you get this? He didn't look up, didn't blink. Just traced the lines of the baby's face with one trembling finger. Then, slowly, he turned to her. And mouthed a word she hadn't heard in years. Why? The monitor in her hand crackled again. And from it came the same whisper, louder this time. Mommy, I'm still cold. Mara stood frozen in the attic doorway, her heart hammering against her ribs like a warning drum. The monitor in her hand hissed softly, static rising and falling like shallow breath. Caleb didn't move. The drawing lay at his feet, and the baby's green blanket burned in her mind like an afterimage. She hadn't seen that blanket in over a decade, not since the woods. Not since the thing she never told anyone, not even her therapist. She crouched beside him, struggling to keep her voice steady. Caleb, where did you find that? He blinked, slow and distant, as if waking from a dream. Then he reached under the floorboard, sliding it aside with a familiarity that made her blood run. Cold. Inside the hidden space were dozens of crayon drawings. All of them the same child, the same green blanket. Over and over, Mara's mouth went dry. Her fingers trembled as she pulled them out one by one. Some showed the baby sleeping. Others showed it crying. One was drawn entirely in black crayon, the blanket just a patch of green beneath a twisted charred tree. She gasped and dropped it like it burned her. "Did someone show you these?" she asked, her voice cracking. Caleb didn't respond. He only reached forward and touched the drawing she dropped, brushing away dust. The attic seemed to close in around them, the air thickening, pressing down on her lungs. "I don't understand," she whispered, to no one later that night. After she put Caleb to bed, though he didn't speak, didn't resist, didn't blink, she poured herself a glass of wine and stared at the baby monitor. It sat on the kitchen counter now, humming softly. She wasn't sure why she kept it nearby. Part of her wanted to hear it again. At 3:12 a.m., it crackled once more. "Mommy." She froze mid-step on the stairs. "Why did you leave me in the dark?" Mara's breath came in shallow gasps. She grabbed the monitor and ran to the backyard, the grass wet with dew, bare feet sinking into the soil. She found herself standing at the edge of the woods, the place she had avoided for years. It was the tree, the one with the twisted branches, blackened by lightning decades ago, the one from Caleb's drawing. She dropped to her knees and began digging. Her hands tore through the dirt, nails splitting, soil packing beneath her fingers. She didn't know what she expected, maybe nothing. Maybe just to prove to herself that it was all in her head. But she couldn't stop. Then she felt it, not bone, not cloth. Plastic. She pulled it out, slowly, a baby monitor. The same model as the one in her kitchen, but this one was caked in dirt and rusted through. It had been here for years. Her legs gave out. In her mind, she heard her own voice, years younger, trembling. I didn't know what else to do. Behind her, in the darkness of the trees, a child cried. Mara didn't remember getting back inside. One moment she was kneeling in the dirt, cradling the rusted baby monitor like a dead thing. The next, she was standing in the shower, hot water scalding her raw hands, caked soil swirling down the drain like blood. She scrubbed it until her skin burned. When she wrapped herself in a towel and stepped into the hallway, the house was dark. Too dark. The digital clock on the stove downstairs blinked 3:33 a.m., a time that seemed wrong, like something cursed. She padded quietly to Caleb's room. He was awake, sitting upright in bed, eyes wide, staring at the far wall. She approached, slowly, heart in her throat. "Caleb?" His head turned, just slightly. His voice was a whisper, barely formed. "He came to my room." Mara's blood ran cold. "Who?" Caleb raised a trembling finger and pointed to the baby monitor on his nightstand, the one that shouldn't even be on. Its green light glowed in the dark, casting a faint silhouette on the wall. A small silhouette, too small to be his. "I heard crying," Caleb said, voice hoarse with disuse. "I woke up, and he was sitting there, in the chair, watching me." Mara spun toward the corner of the room. The chair was empty, but the cushion was wet. Her knees nearly buckled. She sat beside Caleb and held him close, not caring that he stiffened under her touch. Her mind reeled. The crying, the drawings, the buried monitor. And now this. That night, Mara didn't sleep. She stayed on the floor by her son's bed, cradling the monitor like it was some kind of totem. At some point, her eyes fluttered shut. She dreamed of the forest, of dirt and tiny hands reaching up from the ground, of a baby wailing from beneath the roots of that twisted tree, of her own voice sobbing, I'm sorry, I couldn't keep you. I couldn't." She awoke to silence. And then Caleb's voice, calm, too calm. "You told me I was your only baby." Her eyes snapped open. Caleb was staring at her. "I am," she said, breathless. "Of course you are." He shook his head. "No, there was another one. Before me, I saw him. in my dream. She went cold. She had never told him. No one knew. Not even her ex-husband. The baby she'd lost at 19. The one she delivered in secret, terrified and alone in a basement bathroom, while her parents screamed at each other upstairs. The one who hadn't cried when he came out. The one she buried in the woods. Beneath the tree, no name. No birth certificate, no grave, just silence. Mara's lips quivered. How do you know that? Caleb didn't blink. He told me. Morning never really came. The sun rose, but it brought no warmth. Just a colorless light that filtered through the windows like smoke. Mara moved through the house in a daze. Every noise making her flinch pipes groaning, floorboards creaking, birds scratching at the attic roof like they were trying to get in. Caleb didn't speak again, not a word. He spent most of the day sitting in that same corner of the attic, drawing. Always the baby, always the same green blanket. But now the drawings had changed. The baby was older. Not by much, but it was standing now, its face clearer, eyes hollow. One drawing showed it in the mirror, staring at Caleb's reflection. Another showed it holding hands with him. Mara tore that one in half. That evening, Mara returned to the woods. She had to see. Had to be sure she hadn't imagined it. She brought gloves, a flashlight, and the baby monitor, both of them. The twisted tree loomed like a relic of some ancient nightmare. It was real. So was the shallow patch of disturbed earth she dug through the night before. She dropped to her knees and began to dig again, slower this time. More methodical. She found more. Not bones, no. That would have made sense. She found a pacifier, cracked and dirty, chewed at the tip. A small sock, once white, now a mottled gray. A stained onesie with faint cartoon animals faded across the front. And beneath it all, at the very bottom, a lock of baby hair, bound with pink ribbon. Mara reeled back and vomited into the dirt. The memories she'd buried with the body were rising like bile nights she couldn't remember. Sleepwalking episodes. Blood in the bathroom sink she told herself was from a nosebleed. She had been so young, so scared. The baby had never moved, never cried. She thought it was stillborn, but she had never been sure. At 3:12 a.m. again, the baby monitor glowed. She didn't need to hear it. She already knew. He wasn't done with her. When she went back inside, Caleb was standing in the hallway, barefoot and pale, staring at the wall. No, not the wall, the mirror. His reflection was wrong. In the glass. His eyes were black, deep, endless. And he was smiling. Mara's heart stopped. Caleb? She whispered. He turned slowly, head tilting with unnatural grace. She says it's not fair, he murmured, his voice suddenly not his. She says you picked me instead. Mara stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the threshold. Who says that? She whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. The baby. The first one. Behind Caleb, in the mirror, the reflection hadn't turned. It was still facing her. And it was holding something in its hands. A shovel. Mara didn't remember screaming, but something primal tore out of her throat as she yanked Caleb away from the mirror and slammed the bedroom door shut behind them. Her hands shook so violently she could barely turn the lock. Caleb was limp in her arms, his face slack and pale, like a puppet whose strings had been snipped. Caleb, baby, please, she whispered, kneeling and cradling his face. Talk to me. Look at me. He blinked, once, slowly, and then whispered, almost inaudibly, she's inside the house now. Mara backed up against the door, swallowing bile. The hallway beyond was silent, but it felt wrong. Off. The air had thickened again, cloying like wet wool. Shadows stretched too long. Corners. Vibrated with stillness. She carried Caleb down the stairs. every creak underfoot like a gunshot. The baby monitor in her pocket hissed and popped with static. When she reached the living room, she stopped cold. All of the drawers in the house, every cabinet, every closet stood open. Like something had gone through them. Searching. She turned. In a slow circle, breath tight in her chest, and whispered to no one, "What do you want from me?" The baby monitor crackled. A whisper, breathy and close. The truth. She dropped it. Mara hadn't allowed herself to think about that night in nearly 11 years. Not clearly, not deeply. She remembered labor pains that felt like tearing, a bathtub full of water tinged red, a silence so complete it felt like the world had paused. And the baby. Still, unbreathing. Blue lipped. She never called anyone, never buried him properly. She had wrapped him in a blanket, trembling, sobbing, whispering prayers she barely remembered. Then she carried him out into the woods in the dead of night and dug a shallow grave under the twisted tree that had all felt like a terrible dream. Until now. Her knees gave out and she sat on the floor, clutching Caleb. He was shaking now. Tears ran down his face. "I don't want her to come back," he whispered. "She's angry, Mommy." Mara held him tighter, sobs racking her body. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know what to do. I didn't know." The lights flickered. Then went out. Total darkness. The house moaned around them. Wood and wind and something else. The baby monitor erupted with sharp static, then a high-pitched wail, like a scream sped up and played backward. Then silence. And then the front door opened. Mara's eyes snapped to it. Standing in the frame was a small figure, a child. She was soaked. Through her skin gray and bloated, green blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders like burial cloth. Water pooled at her feet, though it hadn't rained in days. Her eyes were vast and empty, and she was smiling. "Mommy," she said, "you forgot to name me." Mara couldn't move. The figure in the doorway was no longer a dream, no longer a shadow conjured by guilt. She was real. As real as the night Mara buried her. As real as the blood that had once soaked the bathroom tiles. The girl took a step. Inside. With each small, wet footfall, the air grew colder. Paintings on the walls tilted. A baby monitor sparked and hissed, smoke curling from its vents. Caleb clung to Mara's side, his voice a whisper. "Don't talk to her. Don't look at her." But it was too late. The girl's eyes met Mara's, and in that instant memory surged back with the force of a broken dam. Not just the night of the birth, but the months before. The denial, the hiding. The mirror Mara had covered with a towel so she wouldn't have to see her own swelling belly. Her mother's voice echoing in her head. "If you shame this family, I swear to God." She remembered pressing a pillow over her own mouth to stifle her screams as contractions tore through her. She remembered the silence after the birth. She remembered turning away, choosing not to know. The girl spoke again. Her voice was layered, like a child speaking over another child, slightly out of sync. "You loved him more, even before I died." Mara shook her head violently. No, I didn't even know you. I was scared. I was a kid. You left me." Tears spilled down Mara's cheeks as she rose to her feet, wobbling. "I didn't know how to live with it. I tried to forget. I made myself believe you weren't real." The girl took another step. Her face was hollow, cheeks sunken, but her eyes burned. "But I was. I had fingers, toes, hair. I had your nose." Mara fell to her knees. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I wanted to keep you. I did. I didn't know how." The girl cocked her head. "Then, name me." "What?" "You gave him a name." Her pale hand pointed toward Caleb, who shrank behind his mother. You never gave me anything. Mara's breath came in ragged bursts. Her mind raced through names she'd never allowed herself to imagine. Then one came soft, simple. Lily. She whispered, Your name is Lily. The girl blinked, and something shifted. The air grew still. The house stopped groaning. The shadows shrank into their corners. Lily stood motionless, her expression unreadable. Lily, Mara said again, her voice breaking. I remember you now. I see you. And I'm sorry I didn't before. Lily stepped forward, slowly, carefully. Then she knelt and placed the green blanket at Mara's feet. I was cold, she said softly. But I'm not anymore. Then she looked up. One last time and smiled. For real. The lights in the house blinked back on the baby monitor went silent, and Lily was gone. Mara crumpled to the floor, sobbing, clutching the blanket to her chest. But the silence that followed was no longer haunted. It was peace. Until Caleb spoke again. She forgave you, he whispered, but he hasn't. Mara froze. Who? Caleb. Looked past her and pointed. Dad? Mara turned slowly, but the room behind her was empty. Just the quiet hush of a house holding its breath. The only sound was the faint tick of the kitchen clock and the soft, even rhythm of Caleb's breath beside her. Caleb, she whispered, her voice trembling. What did you say? He didn't look at her. He stared at the hallway mirror, the one where she'd seen the smiling reflection, the one that had once shown her a child who was not there. He comes at night, Caleb said flatly. He watches you sleep. Mara's skin prickled. Who comes? My dad? Caleb whispered. But not the one I know. Mara's knees buckled slightly. Her hands tightened on the green blanket. You've never even met your father. He left before you were born. Caleb nodded slowly. I know. Mara felt the edges of her sanity begin to fray. She had buried a baby and lived with that guilt for over a decade. She had accepted that darkness as hers alone. But this was something else. This was new. Caleb, she said softly. How? Long has he been coming? The boy blinked, then shrugged. Since the fire. The fire. There had never been a fire. Not really. Just a scorched mattress. A smoke alarm ripped from the ceiling. Mara had woken to Caleb screaming from the attic butt. There had been no smoke, no source. Just the smell of burning and that name etched in crayon on the wall. He found us. Mara felt the floor tilt beneath her. She fled to the closet. It took only minutes to find what she hadn't looked at in years. A faded manila envelope, duct taped shut. Inside were the only things left of Caleb's father. An ultrasound, a grainy photo of a boy with sunken eyes and a crooked smile. And the police report. She hadn't wanted to believe it back then. She had been so young. She met him at a party in high school. He was older, rough around the edges. He had whispered sweet things while she bled in his car and asked her if she'd tell anyone. Then he disappeared. A month later, she found out she was pregnant. She never told anyone who the father was. Even Caleb. The police found him 2 years later, after another girl came forward. Then another. He had a pattern young, vulnerable girls. Secrets buried like bodies. The report said he died in prison. But the date, Mara looked again. He died the same night Caleb stopped speaking. A wave of nausea overtook her. She stumbled to the hallway, looked into the mirror. This time, she saw him, standing behind her, tall, twisted, rotting from the inside out, eyes black pits, lips peeled back in a grin. Caleb's voice came from behind her, small, brittle. He's not angry that you hid. He's angry you survived. Mara turned, tears flooding her eyes. What does he want? Caleb's eyes welled up. You? In the mirror, The man stepped forward.